Hello, everyone. Bill Wilson, Senior Editor for Supermarket News. I'm here with Jennifer Bartashis with another episode of Supermarket News Off the Shelf. Jennifer is the Senior Analyst for Retail Staples and Packaged Foods for Bloomberg Intelligence. So, Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's kind of go back to the beginning. We're talking Amazon grocery and kind of go back to the beginning when Amazon said, all right, we're getting into the grocery business. And people were kind of reacting to this powerful corporation stepping in. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it really started when Amazon's always sold food to a certain degree, right? Whether it's through their .com or elsewhere. But when they acquired Whole Foods back in 2017, that's when everybody kind of sat up and went, "Oh wow, we got to take this seriously." And at the time, everyone thought that that by buying Whole Foods, Amazon was going to revolutionize the grocery industry. And yet, you fast forward, to where we are today, and it really didn't make as meaningful of an impact as people thought. And yet, Amazon still stays very keen on building up a presence in the grocery business. And so the question is really, what is the best path forward for them as they try to capture a piece of that pie?
So what do you think were some of the hiccups that Amazon kind of experienced as it, like you said, they acquired Whole Foods, they announced themselves as a major player. What do you think were some of their missteps?
Well, I think part of it is that Amazon has always, at least to date, treated bricks and mortar as a playground versus a serious outlet. And when they acquired Whole Foods, people thought that they were going to get serious about bricks and mortar, and that they would really work at improving and leveraging the strengths that Amazon has, which is the technology side, and really using that to unlock efficiencies and improvements in the grocery space. But when you step back a little and you think about where Amazon has been with bricks and mortar, they announced Amazon Go stores. And when Amazon Go came out, they were going to have 2,000 or 3,000 stores. They have what, under 30. When they announced Amazon Fresh as a grocery store concept, it was going to be a huge disruptor. Right now they're at 44 stores. And with Whole Foods, they were so focused, it seems, on the Prime member and the overlap with the Whole Foods customer and not disrupting the value proposition that Whole Foods had, that they didn't really execute on what could have been the strengths that Amazon can bring to the table in terms of some of the technology capabilities that they have.
So Amazon has kind of rolled into the new year. It seems to be re-energized on the grocery front, refocused, recommitted, saying that, you know what, this is a major part of our business. We're going to go forward with, these plans of really making an impact. What do you think about the story where they would be well off purchasing some of the stores that Kroger Albertsons have to close due to this merger? You're talking about physical brick and mortar. Do you think that's a real possibility?
Well, I think there's certainly a possibility that some of those stores could be picked up. I think the challenge that Amazon has is that at this moment, from a political perspective, there is a lot of scrutiny about monopolies, and there's a lot of scrutiny about big corporations. And we've heard rumors out of DC for a long time that there are people who would like to see Amazon split into two companies. That it's too big. And I think one of the challenges that Amazon faces is that any kind of acquisition, even if it's just a couple hundred stores, might get a lot of scrutiny because there are those concerns about the size that Amazon already is. I think what might play in Amazon's favor is that when you look at the markets where there's a lot of overlap in the Albertsons Kroger deal, um, there aren't there are some strong local players, but there aren't a lot of regional players that have the balance sheet, and the financial capability, or the operating expertise to absorb a large number of stores. And we saw that we've seen that fail in the past. When somebody who wasn't ready acquired a bunch of stores and it just didn't work out. So, Amazon has that kind of in their corner, but I think that any acquisition would get a lot of scrutiny, and that's definitely one of the challenges.
So what do you, what do you expect to see from Amazon Grocery the remainder of this year going into 2024? They put a pause on their brick and mortar growth, their Amazon Fresh stores. They've put a pause on that. I mean, what can we expect to see here?
Well, they've brought in some new talent. Towards the end of last year, they hired a couple of people. They brought in Pete Bowery from who had Boots and Tesco. They brought in Claire Peters, who was at Woolworths in Australia. So I think they understand that they needed to shore up their expertise. And so it seems like this year maybe it's about kind of that reassessment. What is the vision? What is the plan? And what is the best way to move forward? Because the other thing is that the part of their grocery business that has been a strength, which is Amazon home delivery, the Amazon Fresh delivery, they've put delivery fees on. It's no longer free for Prime members unless you have an order of over $150. They had implemented fees at Whole Foods last year. So there's clearly an eye to profitability in whatever grocery operations they have. But I think this year it's about, okay, what are the actual goals? What is the strategy that they can really build a longer term framework around? And some of that new talent may be able to help them do that.
So do you see Amazon making a major impact in the grocery business eventually?
Well, to be honest, I find it hard to I find it hard to envision that Amazon will be able to create the dominant kind of share that they've done with other categories. Historically, Amazon has the mentality that they are a category killer. If you think about their origins with books, they were a category killer. The difference with grocery is that we have really well run operations and really well entrenched competitors. And it's an industry that is already continuing to consolidate. So that share of grocery is already consolidating into these bigger players. So when you talk about Walmart as a food retailer, you talk about Kroger, you talk about Albertsons, you talk about Ahold Delhaize's US operations. These are all long-term, well-entrenched companies that have a lot of share. And the consolidation that we saw just before the pandemic and then into the pandemic, where we've been losing independent grocers and we've been seeing smaller chains go under, that consolidation has benefited those players already. So it's not like there's no easy pickings for Amazon. There's not a really big weak player for Amazon to go in and say, we're going to snag this, we're going to, and we're going to improve it and grab all the share. It is going to be a long, hard fight to get the kind of market share that Amazon would really need to acquire for it to have a meaningful impact on their business. Because that's the other thing. Amazon is such a big company that for grocery to have a meaningful impact on their retail operations, they have to get to a large share size. And so I can't see Walmart or Kroger or Ahold kind of going, okay, yeah, they're not going to sit still. They're going to continue to fight and push and continue to build their products as well. So it's hard for me to envision that Amazon will get to that kind of dominance that they're used to being able to achieve.
So, like you said, Amazon has so many areas where it dominates. Why is it choosing grocery this year to really focus on?
Well, I think that the size of the pie is one. Grocery is a huge industry. There's a lot of spend there. People always have to eat. It's also an industry where you get a lot of continuous exposure to consumers. So it's high frequency. People come back, regularly. So the ability for first person data, the ability to have an interaction with consumers who are coming back with high frequency, those are very appealing, especially in an industry that has a huge market size to it. And then at the end of the day, we all know that grocery has very, very thin margins. It's a tough industry, but if you look at Amazon's retail operations are loss leading. So if they were able to be successful at grocery, even with low margins, it's still better than what they're getting out of their retail operations today from a margin perspective. So that's probably another consideration there. And grocery generates cash. It's a good industry in terms of cash generation. and being able to kind of build ongoing operations.
So switching gears here, just briefly for Kroger Albertsons merger, the
Mhm.
report came out yesterday that the merger could create $300 million annually in lost worker wages. You have the biggest grocery union coming out today saying that obviously there's issues with this merger. Do you see this merger being approved, and can you validate that report that says, and we're talking all grocery workers with lost wages. We're not talking just Albertson and Kroger workers. Can you talk about that report that has that loss and that great of an impact?
Well, I mean, with regards to the overall, loss, yeah, it's hard to pin all of that on this deal, right? I mean, because there are a lot of things going on, a lot of factors going on. Um, there are, there are things like automation, right? I mean, there are trends that are happening in the industry that are going to impact employment levels regardless of what mergers take place. And so, it's understandable that unions are concerned. There will be stores that are sold or are closed. That has an impact on those workers. But it's I hate to say it's the nature of the beast, because the industry has been shrinking in terms of the number of players and stores, and it's you know is that number overstated? Maybe. With regards to the deal itself, our position is that it will probably eventually go through, but it will not be an easy or smooth process. From our team's perspective, our person who's our specialist in terms of um, M&A, she looks at it and she says, the the number of stores that they're going to be required to divest is really the key question, as to whether the deal moves forward or ends up dying. And then it's also about who are the buyers. Can they find the right buyers in the right markets, to address the concerns about competitiveness in each of those local markets? And if they have good buyers, then as stores are sold, the labor component of that, doesn't change as much because there's still a place that needs labor. It's a bigger issue when stores close and go dark permanently. So that's kind of where we're looking at it right now.
So if this merger is approved, can you see other mergers in the future coming and join? Like, you got Hy-Vee and you got a lot of other major players out there. Can they join together and go against the Kroger Albertsons
Well,
deal?
I think that if the Kroger Albertsons deal goes through, because it is taking two of the biggest chains by store count and combining them, then there is a precedent for potential other mergers, especially if the operating regions don't overlap. So once you start to talk about some of the regional players, that may actually be an easier proposition, because a Wegmans and a HEB have zero overlap, right? So there'd be very little concern about those two companies, and that's completely hypothetical.
Right, right.
uh, no
Yes,
rumor starting here,
yes.
but there'd be very little concern that there would be a competitive disadvantage. I think one of the interesting alternatives, that you might see are GPOs, or group purchasing organizations. And are there ways that these larger regional chains could leverage a scale in terms of purchasing, without necessarily having to have a formal merger, to do that. And so maybe we'll see more of that type of activity, as a way to compete with these much bigger footprint companies that are out there.
Jennifer Bartasius from Bloomberg Intelligence, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.